Good afternoon, students. This is Arindam Bagh here. And in our last presentation, we have discussed about the first seven chapters of Hound of Baskervilles by Arthur Conan Doyle. Now, this time in this presentation, we will be dealing with the next two chapter, which is chapter number 8 and 9. So, let us start our presentation without wasting any time. So, the very chapter which we are dealing here is known as chapter 8, First Report of Dr. Watson. So, from this point on, there is a development. Watson is already with Mr. Henry and he is staying at the Moor in the Baskerville mansion actually. So, from this point on, Watson tells us the story will be told as it was reported to Holmes himself in letter form. Watson describes the loneliness and ancient feel of the moor. He goes on to relate the status of the escaped con, who has not been seen in 2 weeks. The relieved locals assume he has fled the area, since there is no food to sustain him on the moor. The convict, which escaped the prison, he was hiding somewhere in the moor, and it's been 2 weeks, and there is no trace of that convict. So people were relieved because they thought that the person is not staying at the moor anymore because it is impossible to sustain there without any food or things like that, and the moor doesn't provide it. So Watson also alludes to a budding romantic relationship between Sir Henry and Miss Stapleton, whom he characterizes as exotic. I gave you some sort of information about Miss Stapleton, and I told you she is from Costa Rica, and her beauty is astonishing. So it has been mentioned in my earlier presentation, and now we can see relationship is bring up between Sir Henry and Miss Stapleton. Though Watson thinks her brother is a bit of wet blanket by contrast, he nonetheless admits that he has hidden passions. He points out that Mr. Stapleton expressed disapproval of Sir Henry's interest in his sister. So, see here, Mr. Stapleton and Miss Stapleton, they are acting as brother and sister, but in reality, they are actually husband and wife. They are hiding their identity. You will get to know about it when we move to the next section of the novel. So we have also Watson goes on to relate his meeting with another neighbor, Mr. Frankland of Laughter Hall. Mr. Frankland is a good-natured, if quarrelsome man who likes to sue people for the sake of suing. Watson notes his interest in astronomy and the telescope at of his house, often used for searching the moorlands and the escaped convict. So Watson is actually creating profiles that who has what kind of behavior and what kind of nature they are, how they behave. Watson is creating a profile of the people living in that area. When Watson mentions that telegraph did not make it into Barrymore's hand, and he describes Sir Henry's questioning of his butler, Barrymore admits that he did not receive the wire from the postman himself. But, uh, sorry, the slide changed. Yes. So when Watson mentioned that telegraph did not make it into Barrymore's hand and he describes Sir Henry's questioning of his butler, Barrymore admits that he did not receive the wire from the postman himself, but insists that he was indeed at home that day. When Barrymore wonders when all the questions are about, Sir Henry appeases him by giving him a box of old clothes. Now you remember that Holmes sent a telegram actually to Mr. Barrymore to check whether Barrymore is talking Sir Henry or not. So Watson reiterates his suspicions that Barrymore, whose wife he has once again been seen crying, is up to no good late one night. Watson is woken by the sound of footsteps outside his door. Peeking out, he sees Barrymore silhouetted by a candle he is holding, skulking down the hall. As Watson follows him, he sees the butler to go up to a window, hold his candle aloft, as if signaling to someone, Suddenly, he lets out an impatient groan and puts out the light. Watson makes it back to his room just in time. And later that night, hears a key turning in a lock. Watson offers no speculation, leaving the theorizing to Holmes. So basically, Watson is keeping an eye to every characters around Mr. Henry, and here we found interesting development over here. Barrymore is signaling someone by candlelight, and that is been watched, or Watson found this thing. So actually, Barrymore was signaling the escaped convict, and they has a connection. I told you earlier, the escaped convict was actually the brother of Mrs. Barrymore, and they were actually helping the escaped convict, so that he can hide there in the moor. They are offering food and other supports for him, and for this purpose, they are showing signal and trying to set up a communication. Watson watched it, but Watson didn't realize who that person was and why they are signaling to each other. It was not clear to him. So it was been reported to Holmes. So chapter 9, the second report. This is the actually the observation part of chapter 8 is an observation part of Dr. Watson, and chapter 9 is a continuation of that part. So the second part of Dr. Watson, the light upon the moor, that's chapter 9. So having investigated the window that Barrymore used, Watson determines that this particular window has the best view of the moor. Watson suggests his suspicion of a love affair between Barrymore and a country lass. So he was unable to think that it was the escaped convict they are signaling, but here he thought there could be a love affair or things like that, which could explain his wife's crying. So Miss Barrymore was crying for his brother actually. She was quite concerned about her brother. That's why she was crying. But Watson analyzed in this fashion, informing Sir Henry, who claims to have heard Barrymore's late night activity. Watson plot a late night stakeout to catch Barrymore in the act. So now they are in action. They want to find out to whom Barrymore is signaling and what is the story behind it. Meanwhile, there is a development in Henry's romance with Miss Stapleton. It's a rough patch. Henry, going out to meet her, excuses Watson of his duties as bodyguard. Nobody would like to take a bodyguard when they are going to meet their fiancée. So lets the doctor turn into a chaperones as well. All the same, Watson trails the baronet and sees him walking with Miss Stapleton. As Henry bends in for a kiss, Stapleton arrives on the scene, yelling and carrying on inexplicably. Suddenly, Mr. Stapleton arrives, and he saw that they are about to kiss. So he was kind of furious. He was yelling, shouting. As the Stapletons depart, Watson reveals himself to Henry, and who wonders whether Stapleton might be crazy. He thinks himself a worthy match for Miss Stapleton, though he admits that on this occasion she refused to talk of love and only offered mysterious warnings. So apparently Miss Stapleton is a good match for Mr. Henry. They are living on the same property, and they can be a good match for each other. But due to some unknown reason, Mr. Stapleton is not happy with this closeness. So they were astonished with this thing, that why Mr. Stapleton is not happy. And another thing is, Miss Stapleton is providing discreet, mysterious warning also. So later that day, Stapleton meets Sir Henry at home to apologize for his overprotective nature and invites him to next dinner for next Friday. So Mr. Stapleton realized that his behavior in front of Miss Stapleton and Mr. Henry was kind of rude. So he tried to settle things or ease things up. So he met Mr. Henry and invite him to dinner in the next Friday. Meanwhile, Watson and Henry's takeout takes 2 nights of vigilance. This was the second night. On the second night, they hear Barrymore, and they too hear Barrymore and follow him to his window. Watson watches as Sir Henry confronts and shocked and bewildered. and the butler tries to furnish an excuse, but Sir Henry insists on the truth. They found Barrymore signaling someone else in the mood. So when they caught him in red hand, Barrymore was providing some sort of excuses, but Sir Henry insisted that he needs truth only. So as Barrymore waffles protesting, Watson goes to the window, figuring that another person out on the moor must be matching Barrymore's signal. Sure enough, a light shows up across the moor, but the butler refuses to talk even at the expenses of his job. Suddenly, Mrs. Barrymore arrives and explains everything. The light on the moor is a signal from the escaped convict I told you earlier, who turns out to be her brother. So this is the actual reason, that's why she was crying. The Barrymores have been feeding and clothing the man so he does not starve out on the moor. Excusing the Barrymores, Henry and Watson determined to go out and capture the convict so as to protect the community. On their way toward the light, though, the pair hears the loud moaning of a wolf and and wonders whether they should continue their adventure. So when they go outside to capture the convict, they hear some moaning sound of a wolf or hound. So they were afraid because there are already a sense of mystery about the hound, and the reputation of hound, especially with the sound, is notorious in the Baskerville region or in the Moor, because someone was killed. Watson even admits that the locals suspect the braying to be call of the hound of the Baskervilles. So they were really frightened but determined. Sir Henry insists they proceed. When the pair finally reaches the flickering candlelight, thus this then spy a small crevice in some rocks where candle and convict are carefully hidden. The convict turns out to be all the two might have been expected: haggard, unkempt, and animal like. When Watson moves in for the kill, though the man manages to escape just then, as they make their way home, Watson catches sight of a lone figure silhouetted against the moor, but as suddenly as the tall, mysterious figure appeared, the figure is gone. Now, you might be wondering, who is this person? From where does this person come? Why is this person? He was secretly spying on these two people. So the escaped convict is a different character. We find a new character over here. Now we have this analysis over here. There are several clues presented in chapter 8, but little analysis we learn of Stapleton's deep passion, and Watson reiterates Miss Stapleton's exotic beauty. At the same time, the novel moves forward when the subplot of the escaped convict is addressed, and we are left to wonder how the convict figures out into the broader of mystery. At the end of the chapter, when Watson leaves it to Holmes to figure things out, he also leaving it to us to come up with our own theories. Instead of involving Holmes, could surely figure this all out quickly, Doyle lets Watson tell the story, thus leaving the clues disconnected and the legend intact. So the intensity or the curiosity was brewing up, though Watson seems pleased that his master entrusted him so much with responsibility. It will turn out that Holmes did not trust him at all, and the doctor will end up looking more like a fool. In this section, we also meet Mr. Frankland, who serves as much needed dose of comic relief. Yes, we need a comic character over here because this is a very serious novel. So it's like a comic relief. So in otherwise grim tale, he talks of the local burning him in effigy of carrying him through the streets depending on whether he has done them a service or disservice on the particular day. At the same time, the character of Frankland satirizes the idea of entitlement and hierarchy, although it is not clear which side he is on. Frankland's gratuitous lawsuit aimed at protecting that he sees as rights suggests that Doyle has a humorous take on his character's actions and opinions. But we are unsure whether Doyle is satirizing all entitlement or a middle and lower class assumption of the rights of the nobility. So, this is the thing we are having. Plus, additionally, we can say in the same vein, when we get a glimpse of Sir Henry's romantic life in chapter 9, the themes of the themes of entitlement and hierarchy reappear. Talking with Watson about his failure to woo Miss Stapleton, Henry is utterly baffled that the non noble Beryl and her brother would reject so good a marriage. In assuming his own suitability, Henry acts as if he is entitled to a marriage with a woman of a lower class. By doing so, he mimics the assumption of his ancestor and Hugo, uh, who started the cars when he ignored the entitlement to dignity and to self determination of even the lowliest of lower classes. So, this is the analysis of chapter 8 and 9. I hope you enjoy this presentation. Please like, share, and subscribe my channel, and thank you.